Welcome to Franchising Brand Stories. I hope you're all doing well. Franchising Brand Stories is where we get to hear what's under the hat of some of the top franchising brands in the UK and in the world. And today is absolutely no exception. In fact, we end season one, and yes, I'm referring it to this as seasons or series. Let's see, with an amazing pair of guests. But before I introduce you to Tim and Nigel, I'd like to read a little thing here. Flying high in franchising, little clue on the brand. Meet Tim and Nigel's? Meet Tim and Nigel, founders of EasyStorage franchise, joining us live. They share their journey into franchising, what it's like to be a member of the famous Easy brand family, and how their no frills approach to self-storage is making the market and franchising industry by storm. So we begin with chapter one. This is always separated out into three chapters. Chapter one is where we're at now. Chapter two, we go back in time. And chapter three is where we're going in the future. So I'd like to start with chapter one. In case people don't know, and I'm sure most people do, what is EasyStorage and where are you at right now?
Shall I take that?
Yeah, go for it.
So EasyStorage is a value proposition for storage. It sort of really does what it says on the tin. Where we are at the moment is we're pretty far into our goal, which is to become the go-to brand for storage. And that is by making it an affordable lifestyle choice for our customers. So currently we cover about 85% of the UK in terms of postcode. We've got three main offerings, which is EasyPod, which is our mobile self-storage offering. We've got Easy Container, which is our walk-in or drive-up external self-storage offering, and then Buy the Box, which is a sort of entry-level, sort of just single unit box side. So we've got all of those in place. We've got a very good product market fit, with the brand, price point, and the way that it's being offered. And I think we're very well poised to now really fill in the rest of the UK, and then just to expand on what we've built. So that's really where we are now. We've got a lot of tech in our business, which has been built iteratively, if that's the right word.
You do me.
We're very proud of that. And that is giving us, a platform in more ways than one to really now scale. So we've just literally finished, just before we started this call, a senior leadership team, which was basically setting up the next scene for scaling. So we're all about scale now.
Fantastic. That's a fantastic description of who you are and where you are now. I really appreciate that. Just in case you've just joined us today, this is Franchising Brand Stories, and we are talking to the lovely Tim and Nigel from EasyStorage. If you would like to get involved in the show and make a comment live, we would be very pleased to have you here. This is a live stream and it relies very much on people's comments and to understand these stories. With that in mind, I'd just like to recognize a few people who have joined us here today. We have the wonderful Natalia. Great to have you here. We have the ever wise Simon Wise. We've got Tim here. Tim Morris, good to have you with us, Tim. And we have Martin here. That's fantastic. So we've got a couple of questions already come in. I would also like to say that next week, if you're enjoying this, 5:15 next week, we are going to have a lovely recap of all of the shows so far in season 1 before we have a little break of just 1 week. And then we're back on it 16th of May. And there's going to be a very, very good guest there. So join us on the 16th of May. And scan the QR code. This gives you the full recap of today. So let's have a little look. Let's take a comment here from Simon as we begin chapter 2. And chapter 2 really is taking us back to where it all began. So before we get into these comments, perhaps give us a sort of sense of where EasyStorage began and some of the stories around that.
You pick that up, Tim, and then let me say we met.
We'll go in. All right. How it started was, I mean, my background has been storage for 30 years, storage and logistics. So I've been involved, as I say, with storage for a long time. It's such a fantastic business with its recurring revenue stream. It becomes an annuity. And I was away in Hong Kong and in Russia and Central and Eastern Europe for 19 years. So when I came back, I sold 2 businesses. And when I came back, storage was something I wanted to continue. But a lot of the storage models, especially with the business archive model, which I built out in Central and Eastern Europe, were pretty mature. So I looked at the personal storage space, sort of the walk-ins, what I call the big box walk-ins, be it big yellow access, SureGuard, safe store or whatever, and looked at the market, and the market was tiny. It was sort of 750 million pounds, and I had to double check that quite a lot. And it was 750 million pounds, whereas in America it was 42 billion at the time. So basically there was a huge discrepancy. So set about looking at why that was. And it came down to a fundamental fact that in America, the average price was about $90 per month per customer. And in the UK, it was £190. And in London, it was £360. So it was much larger price. So the consequence of that was that in America, they were using it as a lifestyle choice. And what I mean by that is that it was an ongoing thing. They'd have a gym membership, a cable membership, a mobile membership, and a subscription to self-storage. Whereas in the UK, because it was that much more expensive, it was an event-driven thing. So people would use it only when they had to, and they'd get out as quickly as they could. So I sort of thought, okay, there's a way of expanding the market by reducing the cost. So very much like the low-cost airlines, typically, or more particularly EasyJet did. They reduced the price point, which made it a lifestyle choice, so people stayed for longer. So that was the concept where it first came up, and it was a very quick conversation with Stelios. So I approached Stelios and asked him why he hadn't done EasyStorage, because for me the product brand fit is just there. You've got flights, you've got hotels. Storage, I would have said, is the next one. And, I'm pleased to say over the last 6-7 years, that has proven to be the case. We have reduced the price by doing it. And we've expanded the market, and the average length of stay has been there. So that was the first bit. But it was sort of, okay, then how do we make that a national brand? Because right from the beginning, I wanted it to be a big thing, wanted it to be a market leading thing. And for those that have just joined, our mission is to become the go-to brand for storage by making it an affordable lifestyle choice for our customers. So the idea for that was to roll it out as a franchise. And that enabled us to have really engaged business partners at the coalface, giving top service, and it enabled us to roll it out quite quickly. So I sort of had a look for a non-exec to help with that, because I didn't know very much at all about franchising, and Nigel's name came up repeatedly. So I looked at his CV and I thought, he's probably not even going to take the meeting, let alone anything else, because of his pedigree. I'm sure a lot of people know Nigel have been involved in franchise for a very long time. But anyway, we met, and it was meant to be an hour's meeting. After about 8-9 hours, we both said we had to go. We said, look, let's reschedule. And we met, I think, a couple of days later. And after another 2 or 3 hours, I said, look, clearly we're getting on well. Clearly we could talk forever, and there's a lot to cover. Will you be a non-exec? And he said, no, I won't. So I was like, so anyway, I'll let Nigel.
I mean, what became very clear to me, and when we talked a lot, and what was very evident was Tim didn't need someone to sort of tell him how to go about it. He needed someone to do it. And I think that realization had occurred during the conversation with Tim, that he realized actually franchising was a lot more complicated and a lot more involved than perhaps he'd originally considered. So, I said, no. I said, you need somebody to do it. And he said, do you know anybody? And I said, well, funny enough. And he said, well, you wouldn't be interested. And I said, well, actually, I would be very much interested. So Tim said, well, what does that look like? And I said, well, I'm not going to answer that on the spot. Give me 24 hours. And I came back to him the next day and said, that's what it looks like. And we shook hands. So
that's brilliant. And what you were saying there about the fact that, you started to have this conversation, and, it was hours and hours and hours later. And it's really clear watching the two of you, how well you get on with each other. And there's a real sort of attitude and spirit of fun around the brand, and it really comes across, and I think that's fantastic. I've got to say, I've got to ask, how did you know Stelios, and how did that relationship form, and what was the sort of the beginning of that? Because it's such an iconic and incredible brand, and that's not just because my favorite color is orange, but
the fact is, I didn't know him, and it was one of these chance meetings. I'd been thinking about EasyStorage, and I had been thinking about it as EasyStorage. It wasn't a storage company that I was thinking of a brand. I thought there was only one brand that can really deliver on what we are providing, and it's, when you saw a building or a van or a container and it says EasyStorage, you don't need to sort of think about what do they do. It's well priced, good service storage. So you're halfway there. Well, you're more than halfway there. So I always had this in my mind. And I was an enterprise fellow at the Princess Trust for many years, for about 12 years, and which is an amazing organization. It's absolutely phenomenal. And one of the things they did is we spoke to people needing help and inspiration and whatever, but also we had business owners come in and talk to us as enterprise fellows to discuss any number of things. And when I was thinking, I've got to do this, I got an email from the Princess Trust saying that Stelios was going to be giving a talk, and would I like to go? So of course, I went. And straight after the thing, I just went up to him and said, Stelios, why haven't you done storage? It's such a natural fit. You've done all sorts of other, some of them great brand fits. I mean, he'll probably kill me for saying, but others perhaps I wouldn't have said were such a good brand fit. But storage for me, after the flight, aeroplanes and hotels, was the natural fit. And he said that there wasn't something, he hadn't met a business partner, because we all work in the same way. Stelios owns the brand, even with EasyJet. And then we are all business operators underneath that. So we work in exactly the same way as EasyJet does and Easy Hotel does. Stelios owns the brand, and we're the operators of the business. And he said he hadn't met an operator that impressed him, and he hadn't met someone that spoke to his brand values. So I literally gave a 2-minute pitch on it, and he said, "Done, let's do it." And
Wow.
he invited me down to Monaco the next week, which is where he's based. And he said, "Bring a lawyer." And it's quite an interesting way of doing it. So I took an hour, and we literally sat in his boardroom for 2 days, overlooking Monaco Harbour. So, worse views. And he sits there, and it's like point one. And off we went, and we did a heads of terms. And at the end of that, shook hands and effectively wrote a check. And then it was like, shit, I better put a business plan together. So I had it in my head, and I knew that it was going to work. And then find a partner who's going to help me deliver it, and put all the other things together. So, I mean, that was literally how it all came about.
Amazing. What an incredible story of opportunity as well. You see an opportunity, and and you do your absolute best with it. And franchising is all about opportunities and making the best of those opportunities. And just what a lovely story. I can picture it in my mind, the yacht in Monaco.
Yeah.
What a story.
It's interesting. I mean, you say that because I'm actually doing a speech in a few weeks' time, and success equals opportunity meeting a prepared mind is the theme of it for me. And this was a typical example of that, because I knew storage and logistics. Nigel knew franchise. All we really needed was the brand to deliver those two elements. I say all. I mean, it makes it sound all very easy. And that's
very good.
But that's why I was so ready. I mean, I had it all in my mind, and I've been in the business enough to know that it was there, and yeah.
That's fantastic. Before we continue, just we've got a few questions come in from some of our wonderful audience. So I want to recognize a few of these, and then we're going to pick out a good one. So let's have a look. We've got Simon Wise has come in with a question about advantages over your competitors. We're definitely going to get to that one. That's a great one. We've got Martin who's come in with thoughts about the BFA. Another great question, and something that we're going to come to as well. And we have a good comment here from Charlie, all about, again, I suppose, that sort of advantage over your competitors. Now, we're going to bring up these questions and get to these very quickly. Before we do, I'd just like to ask you, why did you choose franchising as your growth model within the business?
I mean, I'll pick that up. I think one of the things that was pretty evident was that we needed to scale the business fairly quickly, and franchising gave us a platform which would facilitate that. And the second real thing that was quite important was, I mean, as Tim said, I've been in franchising for over 35 years now. And the caliber of person that we would bring in as a franchisee would be significantly different to somebody we would have employed as perhaps a branch manager. And we wanted to bring in a more entrepreneurial, especially at an early stage, an entrepreneurial franchisee who was able to, want to scale their operation too. And we always saw that the franchisees would be operating, potentially multi-million-pound businesses themselves. So it was going to have to be somebody who had the ability to be able to really deliver and grow and have the vision to do that, whilst being excited by the brand. The second part of it, we talk very much domestically, but we have the worldwide rights to the EasyStorage brand, and it's really important to us to be able to replicate what we're doing in the UK right across the world, certainly anywhere EasyJet flies. So establishing the UK model and proving the concept through franchise makes it very scalable internationally, and that's very much part of our ambition.
That's fantastic. Thanks very much for answering that one, and that's a great answer to that as well. I mean, I love what you said there about who you were looking for. That you were looking for entrepreneurs, because it's sometimes difficult to sort of put a franchise, that your perfect franchise avatar, or however you would put that, into a box and say these are the people we were looking for.
Yeah.
But I'm going to ask you it anyway.
Okay.
What type of people do you think make good EasyStorage franchisees? You know,
I mean, this is the question I get asked a lot. You know, what do you look for? What makes a good franchisee? And I would first of all say there is no mold or stereotype that we look for. We have lots of really good franchisees, and they are as different from each other as you could potentially get. So we're not looking to replicate a stereotype in any way. Within the franchise operation, we have two sort of main categories or two product offerings. One is EasyPod, which is a mobile storage solution, which is what I would call quite hands-on business. It involves the franchisee operating vehicles, heavy goods vehicles, operating warehouses, teams of people. There's a lot of logistics involved, and that's very much a full-on business. And on the other side of it, with Easy Container, that's what I call light touch. So that is a business that needs minimal input, although the input's very important from the franchisee, but it's designed to be run alongside other businesses. So they would tend to be multi-site operators. They've probably got other types of franchise, and they're looking just to diversify, sometimes out of the food sector or QSR sector, but they're looking for something a little bit different. So the franchisees that we have very much fall into, depending on which camp, are they sort of more hands-on, sleeves rolled up, or are they looking for something really to complement an estate of other franchises that they're operating? And that's quite different. So let me just start by talking about the pods business, or the mobile storage, EasyPod. Again, quite a mix of people, but I tell you what I love is where we've got quite a few father and son teams.
Oh, wow.
And in fact, it depends how you measure success, but we've got a great success story just north of London with a father and son team. And they set up the franchise because they wanted to work together. They're perhaps more hands-on than a lot of our franchisees. They actually do drive the truck and go out and do the jobs and are very involved. They love working together. Dad set it up for something for his son to have in later life, and they obviously have a very close relationship because they are the heart and soul of that business, and that's lovely. But we've also got within that other businesses that are more of an investor sort of partner relationship, where perhaps you've got somebody that's set up or financed the business and they've brought in a partner. And I think that's important. Whoever's operating it must have equity within the business. Otherwise, they just don't have that sort of meat in the game. And that is very important to us. And they run that on a far more commercial basis, with perhaps more drivers employed and staff employed, and operate it more on a management basis. So the pods business is full on, but everything from father and son right through to a management franchise works. But obviously ambitions tend to be a little bit different, and we're very open to that. And there are advantages on both sides. Coming to Easy Container, very different types of people. They tend to be more business people, more investors. A lot of people from the property sector, perhaps once upon a time would have been HMO investors or buy-to-lets. They understand the recurring revenue, because when we're letting container space, we're just letting, in essence, space. It's no different to a flat, except we don't get people ringing up in the middle of the night saying there's a leak coming through the ceiling or the boiler doesn't work. So it's less regulated, but still offers the same benefit of that recurring monthly revenue that you build on. And then once you've got one site full and you start opening your second site, your third site, and it builds that scale, and that becomes very attractive to that cohort.
No, that's fantastic. I put that question up there briefly because I think you've just answered that one, actually, which is really good when you answer a question before it's asked. I love that. I love the fact that you've got this flexible offer that appeals to people that have different amounts of time that they can put into a business and have got different aspirations.
I mean, for me, I think sort of part of the question is what characteristics, and I think, realistic expectations is top of the list. Somebody that's not coming into any business thinking it's going to be, really easy, excuse the pun, but running a business is hard work. Building a business is hard work, and they've got to have realistic expectations of what that involves, and understand that whatever we do as a franchisor doesn't mitigate every potential challenge that the world might throw at us. So realistic. prepared to work hard is so important. You know, we're not, this isn't, I talk about the baking the cake analogy when I'm talking to new candidates, and it's, you know, very much we will supply the ingredients, we'll give you the recipe, we'll even give you the tin, but we won't bake the cake for you. You've got to actually make the cake. And that analogy is, you know, we can put the infrastructure in place, but if you don't get out of bed in the morning and actually go and do what's required to deliver the model, then it's not going to be successful. So committed, hard work, longer term vision, but you know, they're all really, really key to us.
Fantastic. I like that. I mean, I'm going to use the analogy of easy. You know, things are easy when they're done right. You know, and when you've got a great model and a great brand, they start to become. You can apply the word easy, but getting to easy is not always. You know, it can be a bit tricky and it can be hard. And if you've got the right stuff behind you, then you know, you can certainly apply that there. You've answered loads of my questions before I've asked them, which is it's all good stuff here. It really is. I just wanted to say, in case you've just joined us today, this is Franchising Brand Stories, where we get under the hat of some of the top franchising brands in the UK and in the world. And today we are lucky enough to speak to Tim and Nigel of EasyStorage. A fascinating story we've heard so far. And if you'd like to scan the QR code on the screen right now, that will take you to the replay. So if you're watching this in the future, then you can find out all about it. I'm going to let's have a little look, because we've got some great questions and we've got a fantastic audience of people. Let's bring up a comment here from Simon. Simon's put, what does the franchise prospect journey look like and what can they expect? So, you know, the point where someone makes an inquiry to EasyStorage, and, you know, what does that sort of look like up to the point, you know, jointly a decision is made?
It's a journey of two halves, really. I mean, we're fortunate enough to generate a huge amount of interest and inquiries. I mean, at the recent International Franchise Exhibition, we had 280 people register to attend Discovery Days at one exhibition, which is just crazy. In fact, tomorrow we've got the first one with 53, you know, candidates attending. So first is,
you don't realise Simon Chicken will charge you more next year. Now you've said
he did say that. We should have put French shaders this year, so we were doing pretty well. So
that's fantastic.
But, you know, from that, clearly, you know, there is a certain process of filter that we will go through. So the first thing that we'll do is we will give them as much information as possible for them to say, is this the right opportunity for me? So at the initial stage, I'm not too concerned about learning about them, because there's just too many of them. So we'll do a discovery day. I say day, it's more like 4 hours. They'll come to head office, and it's predominantly made up of a number of presentations by different members of the team and a bit of a tour of the facility, and just get to know us, who we are as business people. I deliver that, and Tim often is there as well. So, you know, we're not just sort of delegating that to colleagues in the team. It's about actually sort of talking to us about who we are as people, what we stand for, and what the business is all about.
What your story is, yeah?
Yeah, and we tell the story very similar to the one, you know, Tim told initially. So I think it's important that people understand where we're coming from, but also where we're going, and who we are as individuals. After that, we will then do a one-on-one interview, or I don't tend to call it an interview because it's not a job, but a one-on-one meeting where, you know, I'll spend generally 2 to 3 hours with the candidate, and that's my opportunity now at that point. So we slightly role reverse, and now it's about me getting to know a little bit about them. You know, what are their ambitions? What are their what's their background? How does that fit with what we're doing? So it's a really, you know, we use the word discovery at the beginning, but now this is my turn to sort of understand, you know, a little bit about who we're dealing with. In the past, I've used psychometric tests. I don't particularly rely on anything like that. I think psychometric tests are pretty good for prompting questions that you might want to explore when talking to somebody, but we would never select or deselect a candidate based on something like that. And of course, we'll get them to complete an application form, which is just about data gathering of the basics of their sort of financial position and that sort of thing. Now, this is really where the journey starts to split, because if it's a container franchise, therefore low touch, then the key to that opening that franchise is about finding the right site, and that can be a long process because we've got to find the land, we've got to find an acre of appropriate land with appropriate planning. So we have a team of people that will do that and work with the candidates, and sometimes the candidates got land or they'll bring ideas to us, but it's about working with them to see whether we can get the right fit to the right kind of investment, the scale of investment, the location of that site. So we progressed quite a few of those, and really that's exploration. What's great with that process, it's quite a long process, and that's part of managing expectations at the beginning, but what's really good with the process is we get to know the people really well, and you can straight away see those candidates that are very proactive and are really sort of working to find a site, to those who are sat back waiting for us to do everything, and that's
absolutely
quite an indicator. Once we get the site, then we go into a business planning phase, and it's looking at the economics and the numbers and the investment and everything else. And we'll work with one of our business planning partners. They'll produce a business plan, and then the candidate has to come back to us and present it. And that's
okay.
That's really, and they present to a board. It's not also all of our board, but it's key stakeholders within the business. And what we're looking for is, do they understand the numbers of their business and the SWOT and everything else that they've done? So, business plan's great, but do you really understand, or has someone else just prepared this for you, given it to you, and you say, here's my plan? So what we're really looking for is an understanding of the plan, and then to challenge that. And one of the risk factors for us is overtrading. So if someone goes ahead of plan, that can have an equal impact on cash flow as if someone underperforms plans. So have you considered what happens if the business, because we tend to be pretty conservative with the numbers we put forward, if you do double that, what does that actually mean for cash flow, and can you support that, etc. in the business? So
that's great.
Stressing it kind of both ways. So it's a long process. There's a natural attrition as we go through it. Some people just will fall off the wagon on the way, and that's just part of the process. And then we'll end up, last year we did 160 candidates at the International Franchise Show that came through registered. We saw around 100 of them at discovery events. And we eventually signed contracts with 37 or 38, one new one this week, but 38 of them, signed to proceed. So, we expect an attrition along the way.
I think that's great. And what really stood out for me there is that you take time to get to know people.
Yeah.
And it's so important. Those numbers part of it and the presentation come later. What's happening first is you're getting to know, you're seeing whether you're aligned, and it's so important. It's a trust journey. It always is a trust journey, and getting to know one another is really important. I also like the fact that the franchisees have to do a presentation. It's not a one-way thing. It's a partnership of and the fact that they've then got to present something to you, you've done a lot of presenting to them. I love that. I think that's a great thing to do. But we've got a fair few more comments here. Let's have a look at a few. Let's briefly look at something here from Nick. He does psychometric testing, actually, and it was interesting that you mentioned it, because as part of a mixture of things, it can be useful for certain elements in the in the recruitment process. Let's have a quick look at one here from Stephen. Stephen's he's the CEO and founder of Plan Burrito. How important is location of a storage site? That's a good question. You said there that 85% of the country is covered. That's quite a lot. But what's your answer to that one about locations?
So, it depends which perspective you're looking at. From a customer's perspective, absolutely. For a container site, a customer's travel time is no more than 15 minutes, or typically a 6-mile radius. So the location is really key to finding the right piece of land with the right audience. For our mobile storage business, it's less so important because we're going to them. So our franchisees who operate huge territories of around 600,000 dwellings. It's measured on households. So, they can cover multiple counties as part of the territory, because the customer doesn't have to go anywhere. Their storage provider's on their front drive. So it's, distance is irrelevant. In terms of our franchisees and location, for our container franchises, ideally within an hour's commute of the site is what we're looking for. They're not having to be there very often because they're unmanned sites and they're operated remotely through a monitoring station in Doncaster and other technology that Tim alluded to that we use. But they need to be able to go there should there be a reason to, and therefore an hour's commute is really the maximum we like. And for a pod franchise, the mobile business, they've got to really live on the territory in which they're operating. So,
Fantastic. And we're going to move on to a question from Simon soon. But there was a question that I really wanted to ask you. You know, you've been in business for a while. You've met lots of wonderful and fantastic people and franchisees. And there must be some stories, life-changing stories that really sort of stick out in your mind. But you know, is there one story of a franchisee and what they've achieved and what it's meant to them that really sort of sticks out for you?
I think there are a couple. I mean, again, they're all quite unique. I mean, we've got a couple of police officers, both been in the police force all their career, and suddenly got an ambition. They've retired from the police force and want to do something on their own. And I think watching their journey has been fantastic. This is very alien territory to them. They've worked in a regime where they're told what to do every day. They haven't had to really think about what a day looks like, and all of a sudden they're faced with every challenge that a business throws at you.
And they've brought their daughter in, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's a really nice family. You're saying father son. It's sort of husband, wife and daughter. It's great.
Right. And she drives the van, the lorry. So that was it was sort of really interesting, but it's great.
She's on Channel 4 if anyone wants to watch that.
Yeah, what's that program called? Do you remember?
Not wife swap. Lazy git of a husband or something.
It was all about how the role reversal in the relationship, and she actually does the driving.
Wow, that's a great story.
He's not. He's a good man.
He is. But also, I think from a success point of view, our franchisees in Sussex, they started like everybody else with one small territory, and they were very early adopters. So came into the business really as one of the first franchisees. And, they've survived through the COVID period and Brexit and all the other challenges that we've had. But, and there's been some bumps along the way, but they now operate 3 territories. They've just taken on a warehouse that's 44,000 square feet. So that's an acre indoors. And they're opening one of the container sites, a pretty big site also in the South Coast. So their business has gone from, total startup with some pretty challenging times to one of our biggest operators. And watching that journey and being part of that and, sitting down with them on lots and lots of occasions, and talking about how we're going to progress and shape things. They've been very instrumental in some of the strategies that have been deployed by other franchisees later on. That's for me really inspiring, and we recognise,
it's so difficult. I was just about to say, and there's and but I think I know we've only got.
No. You know what? It's the stories.
Yeah,
it's exactly what you've just said there. That we love to hear. So keep talking. If there's another story, we'll just keep going.
We don't always see eye to eye with we don't always agree on everything, but it's how you sit down, and work through those things, and empathy is one of our values that's really important. So how are they feeling? Why are they feeling like that? Could we do things differently? And we've really prided ourselves on communication is something we've worked on very hard. And apart from all the normal things like franchise councils and working groups, we have what we call town halls, which are like large regional meetings. We have our conference, which unfortunately is in Monaco, so we've got to go over there with all our franchisees next month. But,
on the yacht again, hey.
Yeah, we have to do that, unfortunately. But also last year, we launched a podcast which is inward facing. It's not for the public, it's just for franchisees, because one of the things that we realised, and this actually came from a lunch. I took some franchisees out for lunch, and at the end of the meeting, Alex said to me, that was the most useful meeting that we've ever had. And I said, well, there was no agenda and we didn't really talk about very much. He said, exactly. He said, I learned more in that meeting than I've learned in any of the sort of more structured and formal meetings. And I thought that was wonderful. I thought, apart from going for lunch every day with everybody, which would be great, but not practical, how can we capture that? So we formed last January a podcast, and we set up a studio which we have in our head office, and the purpose of it is a bit like this, really. We just sit and talk about stuff going on in the business, not stuff that's worthy of putting in the newsletter or, you know, making a big feature on. It's just how we're feeling, things that are happening, new joiners, that sort of thing, initiatives, thoughts. And, you know, and it's evolved into something that's probably the most important form of communication that we have in the business, and certainly valued by franchisees.
Amazing. Yeah, you're right. And you said there, you know, about communication, also sometimes about not planning these things. Sometimes these things just happen a little bit by chance. And when you maybe go for a walk with somebody, or like you say, go out for lunch with somebody, and there isn't a big agenda or a whiteboard, but it's just a really enjoyable conversation. And you mentioned something else that I thought was really key about how people feel. You know, if someone's going to remember one thing about you, it's how you make them feel.
Yeah.
And I think that really comes across. I love the story about the family that were in the police, and, you know, and how that started to change their outlook. I think that people that are in those sorts of services, and even the armed forces and so forth, make excellent franchisees or potential franchisees, because they know how to operate to the absolute top and best of their abilities within a set of guidelines. So I think it's fantastic to hear. Look, let's it was just such a lovely story. I just wanted to continue on with that. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's have a quick look at a question that Simon's put here. What will franchisees experience in the initial training? I mean, we've gone through a few of these things, but, you know, when you're just starting, what sort of training do you offer?
So the franchisees have to initially attend a week's residential course, so which is pretty intense. So it covers every aspect of running the business. A lot of it's very classroom based, although there is some practical work involved. But it's really about understanding the systems and a lot of the legal compliance that we have, especially around operating heavy goods vehicles. But it's fun. We try to make it fun. We make it as interactive as possible. We threaten them with an exam at the end of it, which keeps them focused. And actually, we have a simulated game of Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and that's actually what the questions are at the end. So
that's fantastic.
You get all this stress all week, and then we play a game, and it's actually good fun. But it keeps people focused, and there is a serious point to it. But so that's the classroom side, and then before they can actually go live, they then have to do a certain number of days actually out in the field with either a buddy franchise, so a neighbouring one, or our HQ team, because we obviously run quite a big operation ourselves in the same way they do. So they get to actually go out and see it all in practice and put it into practice themselves. And even if they're a management franchise, they have to put the kit on and roll up their sleeves and go out and do, you know, a number of shifts on the truck and really experience everything firsthand, and that's really important. That's the initial training. Then we have a platform which is a lot of online training, which is how our operations manual is actually constructed. It's actually built into a platform of lots of modules, and each module is a learning module with an exam or test or quizzes, I think they call it, on there, so that we can validate all the key things that they're doing, especially for the continuous development and ongoing learning. And that's been really, really popular because, again, it's a flexible way of working. It's very interactive. There's lots of video content, and they're very short, bite-sized modules, and then they're validated with, I say, the quiz at the end, and that's really good for ongoing.
No, that's great. And I love the fact that there's a common theme that keeps coming in here, and it really comes across, and that's that people have fun. And, you know, if you've got to attend something like that, yes, of course, you've got to learn. But in making that fun and in making that enjoyable, then people want to learn. And it really comes across very well. We've got a couple of, we are starting to draw towards the end, but we've got a couple of other quick questions that perhaps we could have a little look at in a bullet point form, because I know you've got to go. I could keep you here for hours chatting. It's always good. But Charlie's put, do you find franchisees need to raise money for their businesses or are they mostly self-funded? How do you help people with the sort of the financial elements of the business?
Yeah, it's a mixture, and even those who are self-funded, we would still recommend raising finance, because at the end of the day, having a provision behind them if they want to grow or expand or do something else is always good. So we very much encourage that. We've worked with HSBC very closely through really since we started. Of course, I've known HSBC and the team there for many years. But it's been fairly straightforward. The business plans are done externally, as I said. We don't mark our own homework and give them the business plan. It's something that has to be done independently. I think the bank appreciates that. We also invest an awful lot of time with the main banks, HSBC predominantly, where we share a lot of information with them about us and our business. They come to the office on a regular basis. They see a lot of the tech developments and data that we have. And I think that all helps in understanding who we are as a business. And I think that's important. If someone's going to approach the bank for funding, that the bank has a really deep understanding of who the franchisor is. So we've been very fortunate. I don't think funding's been an issue for anybody. It's been fairly straightforward. I wish the interest rates would come down a bit, but
yes, I think that, but you certainly work with it and clearly support people. We've got one more question that we're going to squeeze in here. I've just put a QR code up on the screen, which conveniently takes people to the section of your website that tells them a little bit more about franchising with EasyStorage. And while people busily scan that QR code, let's have a look at a probably a final comment here from Simon. In fact, let me I want to put that one back on and I'll read it from here. Simon's put, Tim, having started from ground zero in your knowledge and experience of franchising, you've come a long way for sure and built a truly impressive franchise system. What do you think of franchising now?
Great question. Thank you, Simon. I mean, franchising, I think, has been the cornerstone of our success, along with the brand. And I think I knew that right from the beginning. Having the brand, people would expect it to be national, if not international, very quickly. And you can't create a go-to brand unless you have spread, and geographical spread. So building that out quickly as an own operation, we wouldn't have the quality operator. Nigel said it earlier, the people actually delivering the service. So that, I think, is instrumental to our success, and we acknowledge that all the way. The other thing is, these are very bright, motivated people, and we get a lot of collaboration and suggestions and feedback. It is a system that we're franchising, so we're not going to change at whim, but we have had some fundamental changes because of the franchise input, and it's wonderful. It really is lovely working with these guys, as a team, and having the franchise team, and meeting with the franchisees. So I think, the answer is I love it. I think it's been a cornerstone of our success.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. In case you have just joined us towards the end, this is Franchising Brand Stories, and we are talking to Tim and Nigel from EasyStorage, as you can see by the screen right now. And it's been a fantastic and insightful conversation. If people would like to catch the replay, if you're looking at this in the future, then scan the little QR code in the top left-hand side of the screen. And if you'd like to find out about a little bit more about EasyStorage, scan the big one that's sitting there at the bottom. So we're going to finish now with chapter 3. And chapter 3 really is all about the future, and what plans that you've got and exciting things coming up with EasyStorage in the future. So perhaps you could give us some insights and some exclusives as to what's coming up for EasyStorage in the coming months and years.
you want to take that?
Well, I mean, there are sort of three sides. I mean, one is our pod business, the Easy Pod mobile storage. We're very excited about growing out. So we've got a very big geographical spread now. We've got everything in place to support the franchisees building their territories out. So that's a very, very big focus for us. The containers is, we've got a huge amount of interest. And I think safe to say one of the main reasons why we've got so much interest in the containers is because the pod franchise is pretty much covered. We have got 2 or 3, I think Newcastle, where else are we? Edinburgh, Newcastle, are pretty much the only places left. So containers, we're getting a lot of traction from customers. The other thing we're launching, we have the rights to the brand Easy Van, which isn't going to be a separate franchise, but it is going to be added on to Easy Pod, which basically is 3 sides of a triangle of the types of service that they need. And I think, as always, and we always say tech is at the heart of everything we do. We've got some great innovations. We're on version 2 of Vault, which is our proprietary software, and we're going to continue investing in that heavily. And that helps us manage the franchisees in an efficient way. And it also enables the franchisees to manage their businesses in a very efficient way. So that's a very key part of us. What else, Nigel?
I mean, just going back to Vault, it became very clear when we launched, because I was trying to run about 20 different spreadsheets, so there was no software out there that actually did what we needed to do. So, we took the decision at a very early stage that we would develop our own platform, and we're now sort of 5 years into that development, and it's pretty slick. Still a long way to go, and it's quite exciting. I mean, AI now is playing a big part in our business. We're using AI in quite a few ways. And some of the things that we've been developing on that in the last 6 months are really exciting. We can't say too much at this point, but AI is definitely playing a big part in the future. International, very high on our agenda. So we are having some early talks in some European countries at the moment, but really looking forward, perhaps really starting from next year, to accelerate the rollout of our international offer.
Yeah, and someone who can help you get about internationally, don't you?
Get a few flights and a few hotels. We'll have to stay in easy hotels. That's the problem.
Well, of course, good. Look, that's fantastic. We are now have come to the end. If there is any final thoughts that you would like to share before I talk about what's coming up next week.
I just want to quickly, I saw a question pop up and I just wanted to answer it very, very quickly. And that's what I think of the BFA.
I'd love to put that question up. Let's put it up right now. There we go.
Okay, so I don't know who asked that, but it's a good question. And I think the BFA are absolutely, pinnacle in franchising in the UK and do a fantastic job. I've been in, as I've said, franchising for over 35 years and always been part of the BFA and work with them quite closely. And I think the work they do is wonderful. I think, as an organisation, they really pull together the industry. And I think that's really important. A lot of the contacts I have and a lot of people I've met over the years are all down to events held through the BFA, and also the celebration of success, with our franchisees through the awards and things like that. So I'm a big advocate of the BFA. I think they not necessarily always perfect, but play a very important role. Exactly. So just wanted to add that.
Perfect. A great way to end. A fantastic organisation that the BFA is, and a wonderful brand. And I've really enjoyed hearing the brand story from the two of you. I want to thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a fantastic episode. And I also want to thank everyone who's taken their time to be with us live today. This live stream is what it is because of the people that come here. It becomes a different story every time we hear it. So I want to say a huge thank you to you all for taking your time to be here. So just quickly before we end, next week, next Tuesday on the Franchise Show, our sister show, we have the YouTube sensation, Patrick Findano. and he's going to come on to talk about YouTube and also E2 visas in the USA. So that's going to be a great conversation to listen to. So join us 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST next Tuesday. Now, as you know, we've come to the end of season 1 or series 1, whatever you prefer, of Franchising Brand Stories. And it's been a real honor to talk to some amazing brands. And we're really excited to be starting season 2. That's going to be happening on the 16th of May, because next week I'm flying off on an EasyJet plane, I will add. So really looking forward to season 2 as we get to hear what's under the hat of some amazing brands and some of the world's top franchising brands. And today was certainly no exception. So until next time, my friends, have an amazing week ahead, and take good care.